Hello guys, this is Albert Dura the Tone Junkie, and right now I'm gonna give you some tips for you to choose the best Epiphone Les Paul standard you can find. The information I'm gonna give you in this video is just my humble opinion. My goal here is just to give you some tips for you to find yourself a good Epiphone Les Paul. Since I was 12 years old, I dreamed about having a GIBSON Les Paul, but I grew up in Caracas, Venezuela, and over there the minimum wage was very low and it was very hard to get these guitars because you needed to travel overseas to the United States, for example, buy the guitar, pay for the flight ticket, and then bring it back home. So a guitar like this was something like maybe 1% of the musicians could afford. Around 1998, I started playing professionally, and the only guitar I had was the guitar I learned to play with. But it was a mess. It was old, the frets were all worn out, the Floyd Rose didn't stay in tune. So around 1999, I went out to the stores looking for a new guitar to buy, and that was the time when I first met the Epiphones. In my city there were like 5 small stores and a couple of them had Epiphones. I remember I tried the Special and the LP100 models and I didn't like them. So I ended up buying a brand new Japanese GIBSON Dinky. Even though it was a brand new guitar, I wasn't happy with my tone. I remember I went to my friend's house and he introduced me to his neighbor who was a guitar player as well. And we went to his house and I remember he pulled out of the case an Epiphone Les Paul standard Cherry Burst. And that model, it was the first time I saw a guitar like that. It was just like a GIBSON Les Paul. I was shocked. The flame top was unbelievable. The guitar was heavy, lots of sustain. The tone was amazing. That night I got back home and I decided to sell my GIBSON, but I was gigging like twice a week, so I needed to have at least one decent guitar. I started fixing my old guitar, and when it was ready, I put my GIBSON on sale. As soon as I sold it, I went check out for used Epiphones, but I didn't find any. So I went to the stores, checked all of them, and I found 2 guitars in the whole city, just 2 of them. The first one was a Les Paul Classic, bird's eye maple top, kind of amber color. I got this image from internet, by the way. This guitar was really nice. It played almost as good as Hector's, but I didn't like the color nor the finish. The second one was a regular black standard. Sound-wise, I prefer the classic one. Both were the same price, but the black one came with a case, a strap, and a cable, so I went for the black one. That was in 2002. I remember the serial number said it was from 2000 or 2001. The factory, I bet it was from China, but I'm not really sure. Deep inside I knew this guitar wasn't as good as the Cherry Burst I tried the first time. It was kind of dull. The string tension was like, it was harder to play. The sustain, it wasn't as good as the first one I tried. But you know, I recorded my band's album with that guitar. I gigged a lot, and I mean it served the purpose. I remember the toggle switch and one of the pots failed after a couple of months of use, so I decided to upgrade the electronics. I got a new switch, new pots, and I also got an Alnico 2 Pros Seymour Duncan pickup set for it. The guitar now sounded better, but the string tension and the lack of sustain still bothered me. After a while I switched to black knobs and pickup rings, not important. A few years later, around 2006 or 7, I started hanging out with my buddy Ian, and he was one of the few that actually owned a Gibson Les Paul. It was a Gibson Les Paul Classic Gold Top. And I could compare my guitar to his guitar. My black Epiphone was a decent guitar, but it was nothing compared to his Gibson Les Paul. My friend wanted to buy a tube amp. I knew about a guy that used to buy, sell, and trade nice gear at downtown, so we went there to check out what he had. We got there, my friend was testing a PV Valve King combo amp. I was sitting in the corner, and right there in front of me there was an Epiphone Les Paul Standard, Cherry Burst, Bird's Eye Maple Top. Again, it was like hunting me from the past, and just by looking at her, I knew this guitar would beat my black Epiphone. The guitar had chrome hardware and with gold pickups. I asked the guy to try the guitar, and I remember the action was a little bit high. The guitar was like 10-pound heavy, but the tone and the sustain were outstanding. I told the guy I wanted it, and he told me that somebody had put a down payment on it. I didn't have any money at the time, but I offered him my Les Paul with Seymour Duncans in a trade for his guitar, and he said no. Even though I didn't like the freaking finish, I wanted that guitar because it was better than mine, and it sounded and felt like the very first one I tried. I was going crazy because you don't see an opportunity like that every day living in my country. Next day I'm at home, and I remember that the guy from the store told me that he was into vintage pedals and stuff. So I remember that when I got the Seymour Duncan pickup set, I grabbed the stock pickups and I did trade them for an Ibanez Super Tube from the mid 80s. It was like kind of an overdrive pedal. I didn't even like the pedal. I wasn't using it. So I grabbed the phone, called the guy and said, hey, this is my final offer. My black Les Paul with Seymour Duncan pickups plus an Ibanez Super Tube pedal. The guy couldn't resist to my offer, so I went there. We traded the guitars, bring it back home, did a little bit of setup on it, and it was amazing. The feel, the sound, everything was just phenomenal. When I was doing the setup, I noticed that the pickups were actually Epiphone, but I guess they came from another guitar since they were gold. I checked for the serial number online, and it said that it was made in Korea in 1994 at the Samik factory, which is considered a top-notch factory. The only mod I did to this guitar was to remove the pickup covers. In general, the pods and the switch were way better quality than the stock ones on my black Les Paul. This guitar was gigged a lot. I learned to love the finish, and here's my first conclusion. Epiphone Les Pauls are very inconsistent. They're very different from each other depending on the year, the factory, and other factors. This Korean Epiphone from the 90s was almost as good as my friend's Gibson Les Paul Classic. The Gibson was a little bit more resonant, but it was something that you couldn't really hear, it was something more like you could feel. Advice: guitars from Samix Factory, give it a try. Bird's Eye Maple Tops, give it a try. Most likely they can be one of the good ones. Around 2009, my bro Daniel wanted to get a new guitar. He had tried my Les Paul and he really liked it. So since he's a very big fan of Tool, I recommend him to get like the Les Paul custom silver burrs like Adam Jones. So he traveled to the United States and got the guitar, bring it back, and we compared them both. Unfortunately, his guitar was nothing compared to my Korean one. Sloppy finish, horrible setup, and it sounded very dark. So I recommended him to remove the pickup covers, and we did it. It was a little bit of improvement, but it wasn't like a huge change. I checked the serial number online. There was no letters at all, just numbers, and it said that it was from Qingdao, China, 2008. By 2010, I decided to move to the US, so I had to sell all my gear. And you're not going to believe this, but in Venezuela it's so hard to find good guitars that when I sold mine, I got near $600 for it. It was an outstanding guitar. I finally moved to Orlando and I stayed there for 2 years with no guitar because I was studying, I was paying rent, tuition, and expensive, and I couldn't save any money. That was a very dark time for me, but I learned a lot about Epiphones. I used to go to Guitar Center every week and spend hours there playing, trying different guitars. Most of them Epiphone Les Paul standards because I love them. During that time, I realized that you need to try at least 20 Epiphone Les Pauls if you want to find one that is actually really good. So if you want to buy a brand new Epiphone Les Paul, my advice is try as many as you can. Another thing regarding to the custom ones, and I'm talking like the black or white, or cream color, the flat colors, I noticed those guitars tend to be very dull, like dark sounding, and I think it's because the selection of woods. I mean, if you compare them to the Gibson ones, Gibson are made out of mahogany body and neck with ebony fingerboard. Ebony tends to be very bright and mahogany tend to be very white. So the way I see it is like Gibson Les Paul Customs tend to be like scooped guitars. I mean the sound, the frequency of the sound tend to be scooped. But if you compare them to the Epiphone ones, they use mahogany body and neck, which is warm sounding, and rosewood fingerboard, which is also kind of warm sounding. So you don't have the maple cap to provide those high frequencies. So in my experience, that is what I have noticed when I play Epiphone Les Paul Customs. Of course, nothing I say is final. I can be wrong, this is just my opinion. Leave yours in the comments below. I also used to check Craigslist, and for the ones that don't live in the US, Craigslist is just a website where you can post ads for free. And it was very common that you find an interesting guitar that is maybe an hour or 2 hours away from your home. And what I used to do was to ask the owner for the serial number. And I'm gonna give you the link where you can check serial numbers in the description of this video so you can do the same. If you know the serial number of the instrument, you can find the year of manufacturing and the factory, the quality, opinions, reviews, videos, and whatever information you need. This way you can look up on your local network, Wallapop, or even Facebook Market. Right now is very, it's very popular to use Facebook for that. And this will save you a lot of money and gas driving around to check out guitars that don't worth it. I remember during that time, I found a guy selling an Epiphone Les Paul standard Cherry Burst with the headstock shape almost as Gibson's. I emailed the guy asking for the serial number of the guitar, and he told me that originally it was in a sticker in the back of the headstock, but it was missing. I did my research and I found out that this guitar was made in Korea in the late 80s, probably 1989. The guy was asking $300 for it, and I told him that I didn't have the money, but I would like to have his phone number just in case. I had the hope that this guitar would be at least as good as my '94 Korean one, but I couldn't put my hands on it. By going every week to Guitar Center, I became friend with one of the store salesmen, Fernando. He was from Venezuela as well, and we also lived in the same apartment complex. Around April 2012, I was saving money little by little, and I received the Guitar Center magazine. I found the Epiphone Les Paul Tribute 60 model, and it looked very interesting because it came with higher quality parts, Gibson pickups, and I loved the blue finish. I went to the store and asked Fernando for that particular model, and he told me they didn't have it. He checked on the computer and he said that it will be available by July of that year. And here it comes, the weirdest of my stories. On June 3rd, I got home very late, almost midnight, and I found out my family came to surprise me because my birthday is on the 4th. So we were at the living room hanging out, chatting, and when it was midnight, they say, well, it's finally the 4th, happy birthday, we were hugging, and then I saw my father coming from one of the bedrooms holding an Epiphone case. So they said, this is your gift for your birthday, and then I opened the case up, and it was the blue Epiphone Les Paul Tribute 60, and I was very excited because it had been almost 2 years with no guitar, and I'm finally back. I grabbed the guitar, it was heavy and it was super gorgeous. I played a few notes, and acoustically it sounded loud, it was resonant, it had a lot of sustain. I loved the guitar. Seriously, this guitar was nothing compared to the ones I tried at Guitar Center. I would dare to say that it was even better than my old Korean one. Next day, I borrowed an amp from a classmate and played for hours. But how they got that guitar? It turned out that my wife and family arranged everything to give me that guitar as my birthday present. My wife asked Fernando to get the guitar for me, and apparently he made some calls and requested to the main Guitar Center warehouse to get me that guitar before my birthday. This is Fernando with Steve Vai. He's a great salesman and friend. Now he works for Samash. And thank you very much, Fernando. I really appreciate it, bro. Now back to the point. Why this guitar is superior to any of the other ones I've tried. And here is the strange part of the story. I checked the serial number and it says Fujigen Plan, Japan, 2003. What the hell? How come a brand new guitar, 2012 model, was made in 2003? It's been almost a decade. I think I've never came across with an Epiphone Les Paul made in Japan before. I know they existed, but how these guitars ended up in my hands? That doesn't make any sense. I did some research online and apparently there is kind of a mystery here. Some say that the F on the serial number means Fujigen and the other one said that it means fine guitars in Korea. So if you have some knowledge about it, please leave a comment below. Anyway, for me this is a miracle and I think this happened for all the good vibes my wife and family put into it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks. This is the best gift ever. This is my favorite guitar and I didn't even try it. Later I removed the pickup covers and I also noticed that it has a real maple cap. Few months later I had at home a GIBSON Les Paul Classic. A friend of mine wanted me to do the setup. GIBSON pickups on the Classic one were a little bit hotter than the 57s on my Epiphone Les Paul. Both guitars played almost the same and I think for a third of the price you cannot complain. Of course, when you see them side by side, there are things you notice. For example, the fretwork on the Epiphone is not as detailed as on the GIBSON, but it's something that you can always improve. So since they got me a guitar, I used the money I saved up to get a Marshall amp. I continued building my rig, checking on Craigslist for pedals and stuff, and I found a guy, his name is Ray. He was selling like a wah pedal and a phaser, so I went to his home to check out the pedals and he had an Epiphone Les Paul Classic quill top. I tried the pedals with his guitar and it actually played really nice. It was like heavy, kind of aggressive sounding. I really like the guitar. I saw the serial number and it appears to be between 2003 or 2005. I don't remember right now because I couldn't check the serial online, and I also don't remember if it had letters on the serial number. Having a decent rig, I started looking for a band, and after a couple months I was gigging with one of my bands, Impulse. I miss you guys a lot. We used to play in standard and E flat, so I needed another guitar. I began to look for another Les Paul, and the first thing I did was to call Ray because I really liked his quilted top one, but he told me that he already sold it. One day I went to Guitar Center and I saw this quilted top just like Ray's, but it was wine red instead. I tried the guitar and it was really nice. It was used and it was selling for $350. I didn't have the money completely at that time, so I passed. Another advice, if you see a quilted top one, give it a try, especially if they are made between 2003 and 2005. During that time, I also tried maybe 2 or 3 different tribute 60s, but they were very different to mine. I don't remember if they had the F on the serial number, but they were not as good as mine. I kept looking on Craigslist every day and I found nothing. I had $300 and I needed another really good Les Paul. Then I remembered about the 1989 Korean Les Paul with the GIBSON shaped headstock that I found on Craigslist a year before. The ad wasn't there anymore, but I remembered I had that guy's number. I had it saved on my old cell phone. So I got the number and text the guy, hey, this is Al. Maybe you don't remember me, but we spoke a year ago. You were selling an Epiphone Les Paul. And the guy answered back, hey, yes, I still have it. That it was in very good condition and the pots were a little bit scratchy. So who cares? It's a 1989 Corina Les Paul. The guy asked me, how much do you offer for the guitar? And I told him, hey, I remember you were asking $300, but since I need to buy new pots, it would be nice if you give me a little bit of room. And the guy said, okay, just give me $280 and it's yours. And bam, I got it for $280 with hard case. This guitar was awesome. A little bit below my tribute, but still really good. It was like a 5-piece mahogany body. I didn't see a real maple cap. Most likely it was just a veneer, but who cares? It sounded really good. And I replaced all the pots and I put some Seymour Duncan's Alnico 2 Pros pickups in it. I use this guitar a lot. I used to gig every weekend with my other band, Vendor. We used to play most of the songs on E flat, so this was my guitar for that. I really miss you guys too. Later on, I needed another guitar for drop C tunings. I got this guitar in a pawn shop. I basically traded it for another one I had, but it wasn't really good. And it was in very bad shape as well. I mean, one of the tuners was bent, a lot of rust, sound-wise was terrible. It had a little crack in the neck joint. So I didn't even bother to look at the serial number. I have also found another 2 Epiphone Les Pauls that are really nice, and they belong to my buddy Darren, which is the other guitar player of my bands. The first one is a blues standard. He put Gibson pickups in it. This guitar is heavy as hell, but it plays and sounds really cool. The serial number starting with EE is from Qingdao Plan, which is in China. It was made in 2008. So don't discriminate China. The other one is a black custom. And you remember what I said about custom, right? Well, this one is different. Again, EE serial number from Qingdao 2006. How come this guitar is way better than Daniel's Silverburst, and they were made at the same factory and around the same time? Now let me tell you something. My buddy Darren is no regular guy. He owns like 30 guitars. He has a triple rectifier. He has a Kemper, a bunch of tube amps. And he also owns a Gibson Les Paul Black Water, which is Chad Kroger's signature guitar from Nickelback. So his Gibson is not just like a normal Gibson. I mean, that guitar has like wave relief and piezo pickups and shit. And I've heard him saying that his best sounding Les Paul is the blue one. So that is something to think about. Well, I hope this information can be useful for you. And remember, what I say here is just my opinion. If there is something I missed, something I'm wrong, or any questions, please leave a comment below. My goal here is to help all the people that are looking for a good Les Paul in budget. Share this video to those friends you know that are in the hunt for an Epiphone Les Paul. And please feed the comments with your experience and knowledge. Consider subscribing if you're interested in stuff like this. Here in this channel we also talk about gear, demos, and everything related with guitar playing. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Albert Dura, the Tone Junkie, and I'll see you next time.